Welcome to Betcher's Family Wealth. Today we're going to cover 3 reasons why high income earners should not max out their 401ks. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. So I'm going to go over a situation of high income earners and 3 reasons why they shouldn't max out their 401ks. Now, this is not going to be a recommendation or a specific recommendation for you or your family. This is purely meant to arm you, educate you, and help you be a more informed investor and provide a better life for you and your family. So with that, I'm going to show you John and Jane Henry. Now, John and Jane, they want to retire at age 63, and they want to have around $220,000 of spending in retirement as kind of a baseline. But what they also want to do is they want to maximize while they're younger and healthier. So they want to have a travel budget between retirement and age 75 of around $30,000 a year. So about $250,000 total. But then we also want to have specific budgets around medical costs. So both private medical insurance for when they retire between the age 63 and 65, but then also beyond age 65, have a separate line item for those. Now, these individuals, they just started working and they just paid off a number of student loan debt. And so they're sitting at around $500,000 of total net worth, with a good chunk of that coming from the value of their home that they purchased a couple years back. So what they're doing, and as far as what they're earning, is both $250,000 a year, both very well paying jobs. And we're going to assume no Social Security given their age, and if we do get any by that time, just icing on the cake. Now, as far as what they're doing, as far as savings, they're contributing or putting away about $25,000 a year into their brokerage account, so their taxable investment account. And then they're maxing their 401ks. So both John and Jane maxing their 401ks. But Jane's 401k employer, they match up to 5%, whereas John's matches 3%. Now, if they were to maintain those contributions in their investment strategy, they're going to be just fine. So as far as the number one reason why you wouldn't want to max out your 401k is, what if you don't need it for retirement? Obviously, they're in a great spot where if they wanted to leave a big legacy, a large legacy, then we also get into what about estate taxes and other considerations for a legacy piece. But as far as for their retirement, they may not need to actually max out their 401ks to have the lifestyle that they want. So that's number one. Number two, as we dive in a little bit deeper and we get into their tax brackets, for most of their life, if they maintain this type of income, they're going to be, you'll see here, this is the different tax brackets and the total taxes paid by year based on the projections. And so you see that on the orange line, that's the start of the 22% bracket, the blue being the start of the 24% bracket. And every time that bar goes higher than that, that's showing that they are in that bracket and filling up that bracket. So in their particular situation, they are in the 32% tax bracket while they're working for the federal side of things. And if they're maxing out their 401k, they are getting that 32% tax deduction. However, in retirement, you can see that part of that income is actually in the 32% tax bracket. So if you put in $1,000 into a traditional 401k and you got a tax deduction for it and you doubled it and you're still in the same tax bracket, it literally does not matter whether you put that money into a Roth or a traditional, if you're in the same tax bracket, both when you put it in and when you took it out. And so that comes to the second reason. They didn't get any benefits of maxing out those 401ks. Now, you can make some tweaks as far as doing some Roth conversions those first couple of years of retirement to try to mitigate and push off getting back into that 32% bracket. And so in this case, that's a pretty sizable tax savings by doing those Roth conversions between retirement and those mandatory distribution ages. But let's just focus on what if John were to lower his 401k contribution to only 3% in order to get that full match. And in that case, you can see, because they have less assets in their retirement accounts, that lowers those mandatory distributions later on. And so you can see there's actually some even higher tax benefits because there's not that huge tax drag in their 70s and 80s. And so in this particular case, because even though they're contributing less, they're actually receiving more tax benefit later on by staying under that 32% bracket. Now, if John were to go from that $23,500 max contribution and only did the 3%, they would be putting away $7,500 a year. And that leaves $16,000 of additional assets minus that tax deduction, because now we do have to pay taxes on that income. So subtracting $5,120, which is that 32% tax bracket, what they're left with is $10,880 that they didn't have before that they can utilize for other purposes. So if they wanted to enjoy their life a little bit more, or do some more spending, or spend some more times with their kids, or pay down debt, that frees up those assets and provides a potentially a more comfortable lifestyle between now and retirement. One thing I've noticed sometimes, especially for high achievers, sometimes they're so focused on maxing out those benefits in their retirement. Sometimes they need a little bit of permission to say, like, hey, you can take it easy. You don't need to put away that much money for that far out. You can maybe go ahead and enjoy some of that wealth that you work so hard to accumulate, and do that now versus later. Now, let's say this couple agree that they don't need to save that much money for retirement. So let's go back to their long-term projection. They don't need to save that much for retirement. They still have a comfortable lifestyle, hitting their goals. But if they don't have a specific reason to spend that $10,880 on something else, what they could do is focus on maximizing their health savings account. So this is if you have a high deductible health insurance plan. And what you can do with a family plan is you can contribute $8,550. And when you contribute to the HSA, a couple things. One is it's a potentially a triple tax-free benefit. So if they sock that money away, they are going to get a tax deduction, so that actually increases the amount of total assets that they can reinvest somewhere else or to spend. But that $8,550, typically an HSA requires about $1,000 or $2,000 to be maintained in a cash or money market, just in case you need to spend on health costs. But one of the tools you could use is essentially switch it to more of an investment account and a supplementary retirement account. And here's why. So let's say in 2025, I put $8,000 and change into my HSA and I don't use it. I fully invest it. Do the same thing next year plus whatever contribution increase limits there are. Let's say I put in another $8,000 and I don't use it. I keep investing that, and as that grows and grows, what I can do at any time is I can reimburse myself for any health expenses that I had in the years where I had an HSA. So fast forward 30 years. This couple is now in their 60s and they need to buy a cabin or some other type of thing, and their brokerage account is not sufficient enough to pay for that cabin or that goal. What this couple can do is they can reimburse themselves for the medical expenses from their HSA for all the previous year's medical expenses. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky on the documentation side of things. If that is a plan where you want to incorporate that HSA, one idea is typically on your insurance, you get a year-end statement showing how much of your deductible you used for your family. What you can do is you just take a picture, email that to yourself, say 2025 health expense or HSA, and then you can actually track all those expenses that you could later on reimburse yourself for. And when you did it, you invested it, or you put money in, got a tax deduction, you invested it, grew tax-free, and then in retirement, or for whatever that goal is, you're reimbursing yourself for all those previous medical expenses, and that is also tax-free. So those would be 3 ideas of why a high income earning couple would not want to max out their 401k. 1, you don't need it. 2, you didn't get any benefit from it because you're in the same tax bracket. And then 3, maybe there's some more flexible options that you can incorporate so that you can either enjoy life to the fullest now or still sock money away in the future and get some other tax benefits.